Welcome to another Wednesday night edition here on the Rock Pile, a special Rock Pile tonight. Usually I'm talking to small business owners, coaches, athletes, or entrepreneurs about their journey. Tonight's a little bit different. Tonight we're going to do the first ever college football rewind, and I got a great panel tonight. I'm sure it'll get hot and heavy in here, and we'll see who was prepared tonight and who's not. We got some Big Ten people. We got some ACC. We got a little bit of everything. And with all this, I found a basketball coach to join a football show. So I'll introduce the cast here tonight. So without further ado, let's see if we can get the guys on. Let's see. There's Nick from C-Bus.
Thanks, Rock, for having me.
You got it, Nick. What's going on tonight?
Oh, chilly day down here in Columbus.
I betcha. We got Coach Kramer. There's Coach. How are you, Coach?
Good. Thanks for having me tonight.
No problem. And let me see if I can get Jake on. There's Jake. Jake, there you are. Welcome, Coach.
Thanks for having me, too.
And Coach Medicis, I'm getting the football guys on first. I see enough of you on Saturdays. So we'll get him on here in just a second. But, guys, welcome to the show. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a show I've been looking forward to since I introduced it. We'll try to keep to the agenda. I know we can talk longer than an hour, so we'll get right to it. But Nick and I in the show last week on Sports Watch, we got hot and heavy into Syracuse. A lot of talk about Coach Babers on whether or not we think Coach gets an extra year. My take on the whole thing was, I know COVID related or not, he's with the ACC this year and how he's been performing. He's got his own guys. I said, depending on how they finish, I think you got to get somebody else in there. What do you guys think?
Well, I'll talk first. I think that he put a lot of stock into the DeVito kid as far as his recruit, and I think the system that he wants to play, that quarterback is the point guard of the offense. And as of right now, whether it be injuries or other things, it's been a strikeout. And I do think most coaches will get a free pass this year because of all the situations. Most importantly, the key is going to be, does the locker room continue to play for him? That's what we got to watch over the next couple weeks.
And Jake's the big Clemson guy, so let's hear the Syracuse take. What do you think? Should he get another year?
I think he'll get another year, just because of the pandemic we're in right now. And he's had some signature wins in the past. And if this year is just a small hiccup, I think he has a pretty good class coming in. I think it's obviously not in the top 10, but it's there close, and it's one of his better classes. And like Coach Kramer said, they put a lot of stock in Vito, and everyone thought he was the guy, and he's not panning out to what they want him to be. And also, I know they're going through some injuries. I know a couple of their linebackers are banged up and everything. And they also got new coordinators this year, too. So not having a spring ball to practice with and over summer, that's a new system for those guys to learn.
And I know Nick C-Bus up there, yeah. You called in and you were kind of giving us the business, too, a little bit. But you were kind of split, weren't you? You thought maybe another year, or did you agree with me?
Yeah, no, I think I think when you look at the amount of scholarship players that Babers is running out there this year, I think it's awfully tough to maybe run him out of a job this year. I think, the other thing is, and you guys are closer to it to me, but, I think it boils down to what's the realistic expectation for a program like Syracuse? What's the magic win total, that you guys want to see on a year in a year out basis? That you guys are gonna judge that. I look at look at the depth at running back that they've gone through this year, and like the freshman that they put in, he was running all over Clemson until he got rolled up on there and late in the second quarter of that game. Right, I've seen some flashes of some of these kids that he's brought in, and I agree there's a bunch of holes there. One of the other call-outs I'll say is I don't know why the D coordinator is running three down linemen when that's the strength of the defense right now, based on personnel within Syracuse. Is they have a strong defensive line, and when they run those slants, they open up the backside of the field. If they slant in the wrong direction or they run a play to the wrong side, they get gashed. And so to me, some of it goes back to those first-year coordinators that he's running out there too.
Coach Medicis, man, you're my Syracuse guy. You actually agreed with me last week and said they got to make a change. You still saying the same thing?
Yeah, I'm still saying the same thing. I mean, when you bring in a new coach, you want to see progression, not regression. And the fact that Syracuse has gotten worse every year, and now he gets in his guys, and there's no progress. And you look at a guy like DeVito, I haven't seen that progress, that improvement from his freshman year to where he is right now. As a freshman, he came in, and everybody wanted him in over Dungy, and all he did was every time he got in, he threw 4 verts and threw it deep. And he connected on some passes, made some big plays, and everybody was happy for a while. Yes, the line has been not very good, but you have to make adjustments, and your guys need to progress with you as a coach. And I just haven't seen that. And, we talk about it on the show all the time. Patience, patience, patience. But at some point, there's got to be some progress, and you just haven't seen it in Syracuse right now.
Well, here's what I say, and you guys have heard me say this on Saturdays, and I'm a Dave Clawson homer, but how does Wake Forest have the success that they have when they're getting 3-star recruits? They're not getting many 4- and 5-star recruits. It's a different type of culture there as well. But how was Dave Clawson able to win games? And you saw this past week, a huge win over Virginia Tech. And here we got Coach Babers, where we say every year he's got to try to win those 500 games. And it hasn't happened. So how much longer can you possibly go with that type of performance? But what's Wake doing differently, Coach Kramer, than Syracuse? What's so different about the two?
Well, I think Coach Clawson has shown in many of his stops his development of players is high, and I think that's what Nick is talking about. Is what is Coach Babers' ability as a staff to progress and improve players? And I think that as fans, that's what we're looking at. I root for him. I think the other reasonable question we have to ask, and Nick said the same thing, is, what is the goal of Syracuse? Like, what, if not Coach Babers, like, where are we pulling from? Is it another MAC? Is that a marketable job for a MAC head coach to come? Is it a coordinator type job? I don't necessarily know if a coordinator from the ACC finds that to be an appealing next step, So I think that's an honest question that a lot of us want to know. Yeah,
no, I would agree with that. And Coach DerCola, go ahead. I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, Dino right now I think he's, if I remember correct, only like 2 games under 500 as a Syracuse coach. He's a 500 coach for Syracuse, which in the past, that's what they've been. And 2 years ago, he was the top candidate for every single job in the country because he led Syracuse. So even if they do let him go, and let's say if Clawson comes in or someone else comes in, those coaches are going to see, I'm going to have 1 year of success, and they're going to probably jump to higher and better things, because there's going to be the top programs that are going to throw more money at them and everything. And if Syracuse gets rid of Babers this quick, the next guy in is going to just be, all right, once that I become a popular coach or the highest coach, I got to get out of here, because if I have 2 bad years, they're not going to stick with me.
Yeah, I think that player development's huge, because you just don't see the Syracuse players getting any better. They're not developing. But I think the expectation is if they can be a 7-5 team, a 6-6, maybe at 8-4, maybe they get the 1 year where they can beat a Clemson or a Virginia Tech or a Miami. But realistically, they're not going to be playing in a BCS game. I mean, that's just not realistic. But I think Syracuse fans would take 7-5, 8-4, playing in the Pinstripe Bowl or, any type of bowl game, really. But realistically, they're not a 10-2, 9-3 type team.
I think the big question is I pair a Syracuse a lot with a Pittsburgh and a Boston College type. And 2 programs seem to continue to improve. They're finding ways to get to 7-8 wins. And if we're going to bunch ourselves with them, then why not us?
Yeah, I agree. So, Jake, I want to switch over here. I want to talk Clemson because, so far through the start of the season, I mean, let's be realistic. Right now, Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, and everybody else, take your pick at who your 4th team would be. With Clemson's team, and I know that the talk's all been Trevor Lawrence, is he going to go to the Jets, or is he going to leave Clemson and go to the Jets? But, is there anybody realistically that can compete with Clemson? Is it the Alabamas and the Ohio States, or are they just that much better than everybody?
No, I think definitely those type of teams, that your Alabama, Ohio States, is definitely a different category. with the ACC, unfortunately, no one should, but you see it every year. Clemson has that one big mess up on their schedule, or it's that very close game. Last year was the 1-point win at North Carolina. The year before was losing to Syracuse. So it's almost, in a way, they almost kind of overlook some people, I think. And that's my biggest worry as a Clemson fan is, they get up for the Miami game. It's on prime time. But it's that one game at noon, when they're playing Syracuse, and we got a lead, let's take it off, and here comes Syracuse start marching back. And also you got to hope everyone stays healthy. That Syracuse game, right. ATM got banged up, and you can see the offense kind of flutter just a little bit because he's a huge part, not just with Trevor Lawrence throwing the ball down the field, but ATM is a huge impact on that offense.
And they're actually using him out of the backfield. Throwing him the ball, which I thought was a huge miss last year. He's just way too talented not to get him the ball in space, and he can catch the ball, quite well. One of my questions, I think, within Clemson is, first, I think Notre Dame. I don't know what to make of Notre Dame yet, right? I think it's going to be a highly ranked matchup. I think we can probably all agree. When they tussle next week, I think is probably when they play, right? So I'm at my eye on that one. I think the one thing Clemson, has shown me this year is I feel like their defense is. I knew their defense wasn't going to be as dominant as it was last year. They lost enough guys to the league, but they've been opportunistic, right? And I think we've seen that in college football. You can get away with a defense that maybe gives up lots of yards, but finds a way to make that timely interception or force that turnover. And Dabo has those guys, I think, coming from that standpoint. The one question mark that I think in a tight game worries me a little bit about Clemson is their special teams, especially field goal, is definitely suspect. I think their kickers, three of his last 7, he had 3 blocked against Miami. Mm-hmm. So that's something I got to watch from them in a tight ACC game. If they got to come down to a kick, that could be it, because as you said, Jake, their schedule, ACC is nothing that nothing nobody's going to be scared of to write home about. So if they trip up this year in a shortened season, that could be problematic.
Well, I know it helps them with their defenses. They're getting the lead and having the other team being one-dimensional. Hey, we got to pass it. So it gives those young guys out there, especially those D linemen, okay, it's a throwing down. I can pin my ear back and go. And Venomos can draw up any type of blitz out of it. As you saw in the championship game, even when he had the studs, they had trouble stopping the ball at times. And then the play action kind of hurt them on that. So that's definitely getting the lead is very important for Clemson and their defense.
Thing, guys. Oh, go ahead, Coach.
I think one area that's unproven for Clemson right now is actually their wide receiver core. And I think that though they're talented, I don't think they've necessarily shown the ability to separate. I think even when they played that big game versus Miami, Etienne was huge in the wide receiver game, and the tight ends were huge. But I want to see what the wide receivers do because I don't think they're as good as Alabama's wide receivers. I don't know if anyone's are as good as Alabama's wide receivers. But I also know that Clemson in a tight game is going to run Trevor Lawrence 20 times. And I think they're saving him. They've limited contacts for him. And so when it is that big matchup, we can expect him to carry the ball an awful lot.
I'll tell you what surprised me, guys, is if you remember last year, Trevor Lawrence, I don't remember the stat, but didn't start off the year very well. He had some interceptions earlier in the year. And so far this year, 70% completion rate, 18 touchdown passes to only 2 interceptions. So I think last year with all the Heisman hype, he got off to a rough start. He was trying to win the Heisman in the national championship with every throw. I think this year it's a little bit different. But one thing that I've noticed is if you play Clemson or whoever, you better be able to score 40, 50 points a game because it's almost like now Ohio State, all these teams are scoring 40, 50 a game. And if you can't keep up scoring-wise, I don't care how good your defense is, if you're scoring 40, 50 a game, you got a chance to win games.
Yeah, and definitely you're just all those teams, what's the factor? The quarterback. You're seeing a good quarterback out there with Fields and even Trevor that they're changing plays. He sees the blitz, got the hot route over here, throwing it, or they even check into the run the other way. And then if you have that type of quarterback, you can score a lot of points.
Coach Medicis, Pat's saying, I thought they forgot about you.
Thanks, Pat. You want me to
Well,
jump
guys-
in here for a second?
Yeah, go ahead, buddy. What do you got?
Well, I think the one thing that we're overlooking is the fact that Clemson's not really prepared for those. When it gets down to the Final Four and you get to the semifinals, those teams, those Big Ten teams, are prepared. They're playing a battle every week. There are no easy games.
Wait. What's the Big Ten's record in the playoffs? Okay, that's
You are right.
Get that out there.
That's true, but I'm just saying the one thing that Clemson has to overcome is the fact that, like you said, there's a lot of games where they can kind of at halftime, they're overlooking teams at halftime. They're resting starters. Meanwhile, the Big Ten, you got to go through Wisconsin. I'm not even going to throw Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. Now all of a sudden Minnesota. Greg Schiano's back at Rutgers.
Iowa.
I guess I have to throw Indiana in there now. I mean, there are some really good teams in the Big Ten. So for them to get out of there and get ready for that semifinal or the national championship, those guys are prepared. They've been in close games where Clemson, they get up for that big Miami game. They're going to be up for Notre Dame, but they can skate through 6 or 7 other games. They're not really as prepared as Ohio State, Michigan, those Big Ten teams that are in a grind, the SEC teams that have to go through, Alabama's got to go through Auburn and Georgia and LSU. The grind where Clemson's kind of, you got your 1 or 2 tough games, and then you escape those. It's let's hope we don't slip up and pull a game against Syracuse or the North Carolina game that happened last year with a 2-point conversion.
Well, what you got to think about, too, is you got to think this year playing all conference games. The SEC and the Big Ten, I mean, Michigan always would play a lot of the MAC schools where you can get some of these young kids that hadn't played a lot, a game experience. And now week in and week out, I don't care how bad you are, week in and week out. I mean, these league games, I mean, Alabama's not going and playing Chaminade or Chattanooga on week 8 anymore. So I think that makes a huge difference this year compared to, in the prior years.
Absolutely, Rock. I totally agree. I think not having some of that softer schedule to start out the season is why you've seen, I think, some of the upsets that you saw early on in the SEC, right? I think, Florida stubbing their toe. It's my concern with Ohio State to a degree, right? You're used to cutting your teeth with some of those smaller schools, game reps, being able to figure out what plays we worked on in practice we thought worked and realized we got into the game and not a good scheme, not a good setup, and vice versa. So I think that's definitely something that everybody's dealing with this year, and definitely compresses that ramp up time. And those veteran laden teams, you would like to think, have a little bit of an advantage this year as you're starting a little bit more upperclassmen, and have the ability that's people that have already cut their teeth.
And Pat says, careful, fellas, don't overreact to the first week in the Big Ten.
Calm down, Pat.
But so
We're all right.
let's kind of switch over a little bit. Let's talk Big Ten. Nick, as you said, Coach Medicis, Greg Schiano back at Rutgers, and I don't know if it was a great job by Rutgers or if it was the 7 turnovers by Michigan State and how bad they looked week 1. Michigan comes back. We finally see Joe Milton. Maybe he's the guy that Harbaugh has been waiting for, his own quarterback. We saw Ohio State, Nick, come out and, handle business. Justin Fields looked the part, as everybody thought he would. Penn State, you could argue the 2-point conversion, he was short, but Penn State week 1, were they overlooking the Buckeyes? And I'm going to start with Nick and C-Bus. I'm going to give you the floor. I think probably we'd say is Ohio State's probably the team in the Big Ten, but what'd you think of the Buckeyes week 1?
About what I expected. In fairness, I think that we, defensively for Ohio State, they lost 3 out of their 4 starters in the secondary. No Chase Young, no Bosa's waiting in the wings for Ohio State, right? So they're learning to really develop some pass rush. I think is going to be something that we're not used to waiting for down here in Columbus to find out who that next stud is. They will find him. He will appear, but it will take some time. Fields in the offense, for sure. I think, though I heard somebody say earlier, Bama's wide receivers, there's probably not a better, crew in the country. I would argue Ohio State's receiving core is probably the best in the country. You look at Olave, you look at Garrett Wilson, You look at the 4 out of the top 40 freshman wide receivers came to Ohio State this year, including the number 2 and number 4 receiver in the country, already getting playing time. They are loaded with talent on offense. Their offensive line looks tough. Their biggest question on offense is going to be they're going to run a backfield, really splitting the carries between Master Teague and the transfer from Oklahoma, Trey Sermon. And that's going to be a little bit of a unique balance, I think, for Day to really kind of figure out. Dobbins was the bell cow last year. So trying to ride that hot hand is, I think, always tough for a coach to figure out, and especially in big games. As you're figuring that out in the season, you really have to be comfortable. And sometimes it's not a rotate every series. I know coaches like to say, we're just going to rotate every series. But that's not always the case, right? Sometimes a guy needs a couple series to get going, and you got to stack those back to back. So, I have my eyes on the defense. I think Penn State will be hungry this year, or will be hungry this week after they're stubbing their toe last week. And I got plenty to talk about James Franklin on that. But, as of right now, cream of the crop in the Big Ten. But we got some people biting at our ankles, including that team up north.
So I got to say this, though. The only thing about the Buckeyes from week 1 that I'll say this, and I think, when you look, Nick, you said the Russian attack, Justin Fields was the leading rusher with 15 carries, and Sermon had 11, and Master Teague had 12. With the conference games this year, I think the one fallback for the Buckeyes is going to be if they're going to rely on Justin Fields to beat teams with his legs and take the hits. If he can avoid the hits, you know what he's going to do through the air. But I think that they got to try to work in some run game here throughout the Big Ten season. I think that might be the only Achilles heel is running the football for him. And
I agree with you, Rock. I would say, though, out of those 15 carries that Fields had, I believe 7 of those are on scrambles. So are on plays breaking down. And I think Day is willing to let him extend the play for as long as he can because his talent with his legs can extend the play, and his arm talent, as we know, is elite there. So I do think that you are right, though. I think that's my biggest concern is you got to keep him upright and healthy for sure, and they have to find balance on the run game.
And we got comment over here. Coach Kramer fell off. I'm going to see if he's coming back on. But Jay Reynolds says if Lawrence stays in school, is Fields the first quarterback off the board, maybe even number 1 overall? I would say the answer is yes.
Oh, yeah,
definitely.
He would.
For sure.
But you know who was the quarterback that has surprised me so far, and he was good last year. He's a good athlete. Was the BYU kid?
It's tough.
He's not a big kid, but I think he's in the right system. But we can talk about that another day. But Jake, what do you think with the Buckeyes in the Big Ten from the first week?
Well, I mean, I think it's great for they came back and not just sit out the whole season, which is awesome. My only biggest question for them is, I think they play 8 games. Is that going to be enough for those teams to be going full go, understand what they do best, what they run best, what's their best plays, where 8 games for that type of, those schools is very short, and so now are they going to be prepared for getting to that final game where Clemson, Alabama, they've already played 11 or 12 games, and they're all everyone's playing quality opponents and everything. We say Clemson has an easy schedule. Ohio State has the easiest schedule in the Big Ten, so that helps them along the way. Where Michigan has a much harder schedule. But the scary part is you already see Wisconsin. Boom, they already lost that game, possibly the next game, and those Big Ten, their new rules, you got to sit out for 21 days. That's 3 games.
3 games.
Where you got the other conferences that Nick Saban had 3 tests, and he was back that weekend, where that's not going to happen in the Big Ten. So that is, to me, is the biggest question. 8 games enough? And then if, let's say something does happen to Ohio State and they have to lose out in 3 games, if they go 5-0, do they still belong in the championship game where, a different school in Big Ten goes undefeated or something? I think they have the title game, so they can figure that out. But, that's going to be the kicker, I think, of can you get enough games in?
Coach Kramer, what'd you think of the Big Ten this past week?
Well, I think obviously Ohio State's the team to beat, but I was impressed with Michigan's offensive speed they brought to the table this week. I think I think Michigan is a lot like Notre Dame. I think they're bigger up front. They're better up front, but they haven't shown the elite speed as some of the top teams have. And I thought that was a big improvement I saw. I love what Wisconsin's doing. I think Coach Chryst is an unbelievable coach. Talk about getting the most out of his talent and recruits. But that was a huge blow for them.
Yeah.
And I think the conference as a whole, I mean, you listed 7, 8 teams. I think any team can win on a given day. I just don't know if any of them are good enough other than Ohio State to run the table to really get in the national semifinal talk, until someone proves that they can beat that team.
Yeah, and I think what could potentially hurt down the road, and Jake, you said it, is, let's say a Justin Fields or, one of these guys gets test positive for COVID, can the next man up? Can Ohio State get by without Fields for 3 weeks? And listen, the same for Michigan and any of the Big Ten schools. But I'll say this. Obviously I got to hit on Michigan fast, and then I'll bring Nick on and he'll give me the business. But Coach Kramer, I agree with you. I think for me, watching Michigan last week, and, people will say, well, when Michigan wins a game, the team they're playing is down. When Michigan loses a game, they say Jim Harbaugh can't win the big football game. I think it was a really good opening test for Michigan. Now, I don't know how well Minnesota's secondary was supposed to be this year, a lot of new faces. But the one thing that really impressed me the most was 4 running backs with a pretty new offensive line to run the ball as best as they did. But here's the thing, and you guys know more about the spread offense than I do, but I thought Coach Gaddis was more creative how he ran the football this, at least in the first game. Last year it was pretty basic, but again, you bring in a new offensive coordinator with a different scheme. Maybe it took the guys a little bit longer, but it seemed to me they were a little bit more creative. Did you guys think so, or is it just me?
Yeah, I definitely thought so. I mean, it's being in that spread offense, that quarterback is a huge difference. He's more of a run threat than the other guys were Patterson. Yes, he had a little bit of speed, but he wasn't. I don't think he made defenses afraid of scrambling and running behind where, the quarterback they have now, I forget his name, the Moulton, I think it is, but he's a big
Joe
boy
Milton.
back there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And having that threat of a quarterback can freeze the backside of something. So when your running back's running and he does hand it off, that backside guy has to stay home and respect him having the ball at times. And so that takes that guy away from attacking the ball and getting those extra yards and having the bigger play.
Yeah, and I'm a big Don Brown guy. I love Don Brown as a defensive coordinator. He brings a lot of pressure, but Coach Kramer, you said it. If they just learn to play zone defense and zone blitz instead of playing that press man coverage on the outside, they can't run with the Alabamas and the Ohio States. They're just not athletic enough. I mean, we see it. How come he can't see it?
He believes in his system and his guys, but Ohio State is absolutely elite, and they've shown it over time that you can't play 4 quarters of man against them.
So, Nick from C-Bus, what'd you think of the Wolverines week 1?
Yeah, I was impressed. I liked what I saw. I heard plenty about Milton going into the year. I'm not sold on Minnesota, right? I think obviously they look like they're in a little bit of a rebuild mode. And I'm with you on the zone defense. I think that's definitely something that they need to consider. But I think the biggest issue for me with Michigan has been it starts up front on both lines, defensive line and offensive line. And I was impressed with what I saw with Michigan's defensive line on Saturday. I thought they actually, I can't remember his name now, but it reminded me of Brandon Graham, rushing the passer, being able to stunt inside and outside. And Jack I think Uche. And then they also got to figure out a way, they got to figure out a way to hold blocks. I think they're going to be able to run the ball, which they started to show that a little bit last year. But I think ironically, Michigan's one weakness I see on offense is I don't see a playmaker on the outside. I don't see that wide receiver that gives me pause to where now defenses can't run a spy on Milton and bring an extra guy into the box as they're not worried about the top being blown off of their defense. And so I think that's going to be a little bit problematic for them. And I also think that, Harbaugh is the wild card, Rock. I mean, we can talk about him not finding his quarterback, and I think that's an albatross that he has to wear around his neck until until he's able to prove that he can develop somebody there. But his big game prowess is not there. You guys as the fan base and alumni expect more than what he's delivered, in my opinion. And I think that at some point, besides just Ohio State, I think they have to get back to being able to run the Big Ten next to Ohio State. And I guess I'm not sold on Harbaugh yet. And until he proves to me otherwise,
I think the proof of the pudding is he's got to beat Ohio State. I mean, and when you look at his record since he's been there, he's won 10 games, 4 out of 6 years, and he's bringing in all these 4- and 5-star recruits. But the Achilles heel is he can't beat the Buckeyes.
Yeah, but what's he done? I mean, but what's he done in bowl games? How they've looked against other big time competition outside of the Big Ten. I mean, have you been impressed with what you've seen? I get it that they have beat Ohio State, and Ohio State's been on this top of this mountain now for 10, 12 years, right? So I think we can all agree Ohio State's been the top tier, of the Big Ten for a while now. But I guess I don't see Harbaugh as being that coach. You compare him to a Dabo, you compare him to a Saban, compare him to even a Franklin with the way he relates to his players. I just think that's a huge concern. I look at these coaches that get the most, a Gundy at Oklahoma State. I look at these coaches that really make these players gravitate towards them. Harbaugh, to me, seems like he's stuck in 1992, and he has not left 1992. And I think that's a huge problem and will continue to show its head for Michigan until they find somebody else that's going to bring a fresh perspective to that program.
Coach Medicis, give me something. Stick up for me here. I need some reasons.
I think jumping back to what Nick said about Syracuse, what do Michigan fans want in their program? Because they had that struggle period before he got there, and it's almost like they're happy where they're at right now. They're a 9-10 win team. They get to the Gator Bowl, and they play somebody from the SEC, and they lose. And it's okay because we won 10 games. We've improved. We got this top class. It's, when I grew up, Michigan was a contender for a national championship. And right now, we're hoping that Michigan can compete with Ohio State. We're not even talking about Michigan's going to beat Ohio State this year. This is going to be the year. We're talking, I hope Ryan Day doesn't put 100 on us this year. So I think that fear factor of Michigan that used to be there is no longer there. And I think Michigan fans have kind of accepted the fact that they're the second best team in the Big Ten, if they're really that second best team. They're now fighting with Wisconsin, Penn State, those next tier teams to be that second team, that runner up to Ohio State right now.
Well, Coach Catanzaro from he's a Rome RFA alumni says it's not that strong of a conference. He said, who else in the Big Ten? He says other than Wisconsin is a top 15 contender. Coach Kramer, what do you think? Jim Harbaugh, come on, I need some backing up here.
Well, I think we'll say this. Part of being a coach is getting your guys on the biggest stage to perform at their highest level. And 3 coaches are doing this consistently. Dabo Swinney, Nick Saban, and Ryan Day. And Urban Meyer was there when he was at Ohio State. For Harbaugh to get to where we want Harbaugh to be, we expect him to go toe-to-toe with these other coaches. And until he gets Michigan to perform and play at that elite level in the game, I think the question is still there.
Yeah. Well, just remember, years ago it was 4th and 1, and I still say he didn't get it, and he got the first down, and Michigan went on and played for the national championship. But, Nick, I'll say this. That was the year. Listen, I'll say this. That was the year, and I would never say this. They should have played again right after for the national championship because they were the 2 best teams in college football that year. I really believe that. But here's the last thing I'll say on Jim Harbaugh, and then I want to get into the Big 12 here, and then we'll get into some of the predictions and all that. But I'm not sticking up for Jim Harbaugh because I agree with you guys. He's got to beat Ohio State. He's got to get that monkey off his back. If he beats Ohio State, I think it's a whole different type of conversation. However, the bowl games that he's been in, the New Year's Day bowl games, He's played Florida, 2 really good Florida teams twice. He's played a lot of those SEC schools who, Nick, I'm a Big Ten homer, but the Big Ten doesn't have a great record against the SEC. And again, I'm not sticking up because you got to be able to beat those teams. They're paying you $7 million a year. You got to go earn your paycheck. And I agree, he hasn't done that, but maybe this is the year. I say that every year. This year I got to put up with my wife on Christmas this year. Usually it's over Thanksgiving. This year it's during Christmas time. I got to watch the game. All right, guys, real fast, I want to jump in. I wanted to get into Greg Schiano, but I want to get into a little bit of the SEC. We're going through, we're talking Ohio State. We're talking Clemson. I want to get into Alabama because I want to ask you guys the system-oriented quarterbacks. Mac Jones, the junior for Alabama, comes in, and they look like they haven't lost a beat. Coach Kramer, you mentioned the Alabama wide receivers are probably the best in the country. I'm going to say they were 1 and 1A with Ohio State. Is it the receivers are just that good, or is Mac Jones playing that well, or is it a combination of both?
I think, first of all, their offensive line is outstanding.
Right.
That's where it starts. I think their ability to be balanced and have first-round draft pick running backs helps out, which now, defenses have to dictate how many guys are going to move up into the box to stop that run game. And now it allows elite athletes to get in one-on-one situations, and they're dudes. I mean, they run away from you, and the quarterback rarely is picking himself off the grass, and he's upright and he's able to deliver the ball. This kid is accurate. He seems confident, and he's playing good football right now.
You know what's key to that? And then we'll go to Jake here, but he's only thrown 2 interceptions, but here's a key stat, and you just said the offensive line. He's only been sacked 6 times so far to start the year. And you can keep any quarterback upright. Ask Tom Brady. You can win a lot of games. He's only been sacked twice. Jake, what do you think, Alabama?
It's with Jones, he got to sit behind some credible quarterbacks sitting there and just learning in there because I think he's a junior now. So he got to see Tua and the one before him just beat and Hurts and just be in that quarterback room, seeing what they do and how they practice and everything. And it looks like he's taken that to the extreme and shown that he can be to do that. The one question I always have with Alabama and watching the things is, their defense a little bit. They're not that stout defense that's holding guys to shutouts and everything. They got in a shootout with Ole Miss. The last game, Georgia, they gave up 21 points right from the get-go, and they battled their way back. So, to me, it's going to be their defense. Are they going to be able to hold teams, or is it going to be another shootout like they've done in the past, or this year, not in the past?
I think Saban said as much, Jake. Saban, I think it was either last week or the week before, said that college football right now is not about a dominating defense. It's about a dominating offense. And I think he's recognized that, and he's pivoted. In the way he runs his offense, he's more aggressive on offense than we would ever dream Nick Saban offense to be even 6-7 years ago, right? I mean, he was always pound the ball, and take his shots when he wanted to, and now it's way more spaced out, and he's kind of adapted. I think the one thing with Bama that not their fault. I like what I see from their offensive line. I would agree that's probably the most polished unit I think probably in college football, but there's nobody in the SEC right now that I look at besides Bama that really makes me think they have somebody on their level, which they typically do. Year after year, there's typically that LSU or that Georgia, that jumps up there and is ready to hang with them, in that conference, and it's going to be a tight race. Right now, I think we have A&M, there. Florida stubbed their toe already. Georgia's already lost to them. I'm not sure that they're going to have that true match for match talent probably until they get to the semifinals of the college football playoff, just because I don't think the SEC this year, you're not going to convince me A&M is a team that's going to, then they've already handled them, right? I don't see anybody out there in the SEC that really gives me, hey, those guys can compete with them talent for talent right now.
Coach Medicis, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of echo what they're saying. I agree. And, Saban came out and said, we're going to outscore people this year. We don't have that dominant defense that's going to be able to shut teams down. We're going to have to score a lot of points. And, at some point you got to give him credit. He went out and he brought in Lane Kiffin and kind of changed his offense, and he's kind of stuck with it. He brought in Lane Kiffin and went to the spread, and they butted heads at first, but he stayed with it. Now he's got Sarkisian in there, and they're throwing the ball over the place. I am interested. I keep seeing Pat talking about Waddle being out. I am interested to see how much that changes their offense when they don't have that stud. I mean, they still have lots of other playmakers, but their guy, the number one, is now out. Who steps up as the number two? Because there's a lot of guys that can play off that number one. It's easy to get open when everybody's safeties are over the top on Waddle, and now you have more space to operate. But without him, how much does that change their offense? That's what I want to see now next week. If they come out and score 60 again, I'll back right off and say, okay, the next guy up. But I still got to see it first.
Pat says don't count Georgia out yet. They were in that game until late, and I'll agree with Pat. But I think the other key is this. Coach Kramer was talking about the offensive line. Najee Harris has rushed for 600 yards, and he's leading the NCAA with 14 touchdowns at Alabama. And they have the 3 wide receivers that are all over 600 yards. But when you guys talk about, the offense, you mentioned Steve Sarkisian, who I think Steve's a great offensive coordinator. I hope he gets another shot to be a head coach. And you mentioned Lane Kiffin. The one thing I want to say and give credit to Nick Saban, where, again, going back to Jim Harbaugh, I never in a million years thought I'd see Jim Harbaugh line up in the shotgun and run a spread offense. I never thought I'd see that with Nick Saban, but give Nick Saban credit. Nick Saban brought in guys that were spread offense guys, and he's been able to adapt to say, you know what? I can't ground and pound in the I formation because I got to score 40, 50 points a game because these other teams have all these great athletes. So I'll give Nick Saban all the credit in the world. And Jay Reynolds says it seems like Saban recruits a game manager at quarterback with all these 4- and 5-star recruits at wide receiver. I still think in crunch time, down the stretch, don't count Florida out yet. Kyle Trask, the senior quarterback, they got the weapons on offense. Don't count them out yet. I'm not saying they can beat Alabama, but I think Florida's going to be there too. But somehow, some shape or form, Nick Saban's going to find a way. If they get into the playoff, which I believe they will, he's going to turn up the defense. He's still got a lot of guys back on that defense, but I think he'll find a way defensively as the season goes. That's just my thought. All right, I lost my sheet here. All right, so I wanted to get into a couple things fast, guys, with the Big 12 because I think everybody would probably say, Oklahoma State, we'll see how good they really are. They get Texas this week. They still got to play Iowa State, and I think Kansas State, who's the best team in the Big 12. They still got a lot of tough games coming up, but I want to start with Texas first because they'll play Oklahoma State. And Tom Herman, another one of those Ohio State guys. Chris Ash, he brought in that was with Ohio State on Urban Meyer's staff. Tom Herman's another one, was the hot name coach that got this Texas job. 500 or better at Texas is not going to cut it. What do you guys make of Texas? Coach Kramer, let's start with you first.
Well, you'd think it's a recruiting hotbed, right? We talk about Texas high school football. It almost seems like they've taken the back seat to Jimbo Fisher and A&M until proven differently. But those things where he seems like he's got a veteran quarterback. You want to believe in the guys he has coming back, a veteran group, but he struggles against Oklahoma. And I guess right now Texas would be in a similar situation with Tom Herman as we put with Jim Harbaugh until he can cross that line with that top group in the conference, then we can't put them in that category.
Jake, what do you think about Texas so far this year?
Yeah, I mean, they a little bit disappointing, with their senior quarterback back, and they seem like they have all the pieces and barely getting by with some wins, and obviously not beating Oklahoma forever. And those are the type of programs, same with Jim Harbaugh, that it's either go all the way and win, you make everyone happy, or you're having a subpar year. So it's almost like you can never truly win in those things unless you're winning every single time. I think it's going to be interesting to see next year once he loses that quarterback. Does he have someone in the waitings or ready to go, or are they going to take even more steps backwards?
Right.
I would like to see that because I haven't heard of their backup quarterback or someone waiting that, hey, this guy needs to get going, that that is pushing them out there, the quarterback they have now.
Coach Medicis, how about you?
It seems like every year we're always saying, what if with Texas? Because right now I could easily look at you and say, they're 2 plays away from being a top 5, top 7 team right now in the country. And you wouldn't bat an eye and you'd say, all right, they beat Oklahoma, which they should have beat Oklahoma. And then they got upset the week before. I mean, they're literally 2 plays from being 5-0. And this conversation is completely different. So, again, it just talks about the beauty of college football where literally we could talk about a guy who's on the hot seat because he lost those 2 games. And if not, we could be saying, Todd Herman, you got to throw his name in as coach of the year right now.
Nick from CBUS, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of ifs and buts with Texas, right? And I feel like it's been that way now for, probably the last 2 years. I think we've seen that's probably why I think it's probably why they're so, mind-numbing to me, I guess, is you look at the talent and you see it there and you think, okay, it's time, right? You got to put it together. And they just can't. They find a way to beat Oklahoma when they shouldn't, or they're not expected to, and then the roles are kind of reversed this year, ironically, and they stub their toe. The perspective I can give on Tom Herman from when he was here in Columbus is that he is a little rough around the edges when it comes to boosters and when it comes to alumni. And what I know about Texas is, there's still a lot of good old boy club down there in Texas from that perspective, and I think that shortens his leash a lot in Texas because I think he rubs people the wrong way, and you can get away with that if you're winning. But to Nick's point, Coach Medicis' point, hey, if you're not going to be in that top 5 conversation, now they're going to start to look and say, are you worth it? The scuttlebutt that I've heard down here is that, Urban Meyer is definitely a possibility for Texas potentially to come down there. They're a big enough, obviously, as we talked about, Coach Kramer talked about a recruiting hotbed down there. And we know Urban wants that already built in to a program that he would go to. I think he loves the area. And, the Big 12 would be a conference that he has not dipped his toe in the water into yet. So I definitely think that's a possibility and something to keep an eye on as the year progresses.
Here's the stat line for me. Jim Harbaugh hasn't beaten Ohio State. Coach Herman has lost to Oklahoma the last 3 years. He hasn't beat them. The 1 year I thought, the last couple of years, Texas beat a really good Utah team in a bowl game. The year before, they beat a really good Georgia team, who that was the year many people thought Georgia should have played for the national championship.
Yep.
And he beat them. And I remember Sam Ehlinger, who I love Sam Ehlinger. I think he's one of the toughest competitors in college football. But he got on the stage and said, Texas is back. And they haven't had that, that big win. My biggest question is really going to be Oklahoma State. They have 3 really tough games coming up. In my eyes, I think Kansas State's the best team in the Big 12.
You're nuts, right?
But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
Crazy.
But this is the first time I can honestly say this. When you look across the Big 12 where they say plays no defense, Oklahoma State's only given up 45 points the entire season. However, they haven't really played anybody. I was looking at their schedule. They beat Tulsa. They beat West Virginia. They beat Kansas. And they did just beat Iowa State 24-21, but they haven't really played anybody yet in the Big 12. So we'll see if Oklahoma State's defense can hold up. But, Nick, when you say the Urban Meyer thing, the last 2 years, and Coach Medicis can back me up, I said the first job I think he's still going to get is the USC job because I think once the Pac-12 starts up again, I think he's going to potentially go there. And then I do think with the whole Texas piece, it's a hotbed for recruiting. He can go in the Big 12 and win a lot of games, I think. I think it's a really good option next year. You see Urban Meyer back coaching somewhere. But I'm going to say 1 or 2 of those schools would be my gut feeling.
Yeah. I would agree. My biggest thing on USC for Urban is I don't know if he wants to go that far cross country. His daughter just had another baby who lives locally here in Columbus. He likes, he has really circled the wagons a little bit from a family perspective. The thing I'm gonna tell you about Oklahoma State that I like is they are running the football, and they are running it at a really good clip and a really good pace. And I agree, competition has not been great, But, that raises some eyebrows with me. If you're playing defense, and we're going to see more with the competition they play, but if you're playing defense and you're running the rock well, that definitely raised some eyebrows. And I think Mike Gundy's a hell of a coach. I really do. I think he really grabbed Oklahoma State and righted that ship. And, he's been there now for what I think over 10 years or darn near close. So he's got to be one of the more tenured coaches in the country. My eyes for sure, best team in the Big 12 is Oklahoma State that I've seen. You want to talk about Kansas State? Talk about a team that hasn't played anybody yet either. They struggle to score points. And that's a recipe for concern in the Big 12, regardless of how good you think their defense is.
Coach Medicis, I brought you on here because I want you to tell these guys who you said last Saturday who could potentially get the Michigan job if Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL.
I have no idea. I don't remember.
You said Urban Meyer would go to Michigan, and I said not a chance he goes to Michigan. There's not a chance he goes to Michigan.
That was more to get a reaction out of the Michigan guy, like, Urban Meyer's coming to Michigan to save the day.
The other spot, Rock, is Notre Dame. If Brian Kelly ever runs out of steam there, that would be another school I know is on Urban's short list, and I would not be shocked to see him there.
Hey, to jump in on Oklahoma State, we talked about how they haven't played anybody. Their next 3 games are Texas, at Kansas State, and at Oklahoma. So in the next 3 weeks,
we're going to
find out if Oklahoma State's really for real or if they're just a team that's loving that early schedule that was a little weaker than everyone else's.
Agreed.
All right, guys, I want to get into, because we're just wrapping up. I want to get into, I told you guys, I want to know who the upset specials are for this week in the top 25. Now, I'm going to toot my horn. Last week on the show, Coach Medicis, I called it. And it might not have been a big pick for you guys, but, everybody said, no. I went with Indiana last week. I said Indiana is a much better football team the last few years. Coach Kramer, am I right? They're a much better and improved team.
Indiana, every year gets a little bit better.
They're not I don't think they're the doormat of the Big Ten anymore.
Absolutely not.
All right, so I want to go round the horn. I want to go upset specials first, and then I got some games I want to go through and pick if we can. So let's start. I'm going to go round the horn first. Let's Nick from C-Bus. Who's the upset special? Who you got this week?
Well, I might have already tipped my hand, but I'm taking West Virginia over Kansas State. West Virginia plays a heck of defense. They struggle to score points, but they play great defense. I think they can shut Kansas State down. Kansas State has been prone to turn the ball over a little bit, so I'm going to take West Virginia over Kansas State.
I'm going to have you guys text me these. So I was going to try to write them down, but text me them later who you guys have. But that's a good one. I like West Virginia. Coach DerCola, who you got?
Missouri over Florida. Florida had a long layoff, and we'll see if they have any rust on. And Missouri's coming off 2 big wins over Kentucky and LSU.
Ooh, I like it. I was thinking of that. I was going back and forth. Coach Kramer, who you got?
Well, there's 2 offenses that I love to watch every time they're on, and that's Central Florida and that's Memphis. And I'm gonna ride Memphis over Cincinnati.
Oh, all right. Coach Medicis, what do you got?
Yeah, I've been back and forth on 2 right now. I'm jumping back on that Indiana team. I think they just knocked off a top 10 team for the first time since.
Come on, it's not an upset if they beat Rutgers.
No, I'm not saying they're going to win. I'm saying Rutgers.
Oh, you're going Rutgers. All right. Okay.
Greg Schiano is going to go 2-0. Right. They're going to knock off Indiana coming to New Jersey to play. And then number 2, I'm going to go back on that Oklahoma State team. Oklahoma State is going to look ahead. They got Kansas State in a big matchup. Texas needs this game. This is Tom Herman's job on the line right now. I'm saying Texas goes.
Well, wait a minute. I didn't say to pick 2 games.
I said I was stuck between 2. I'm just.
Well, geez, you just stole my pick. I'm going Texas because I don't think Oklahoma State can score with Texas. I think Texas is going to score a lot of points against Oklahoma State, and I don't think Oklahoma State's going to be able to keep up. And Pat says upset special. He likes Texas too over Oklahoma State. So I'm going Texas over Oklahoma State this week. Because, again, I think Kansas State's the best team in the Big 12. So I'm sticking by Texas over Oklahoma State this week. All right, guys, we got to go to the picks. And again, if you guys can send me these, this way I don't have to try to write them down. But I want to start with the first game, and Coach Kramer's riding Memphis. I think Cincinnati is one of the best teams in the country, but they play in a lousy division. Memphis, Cincinnati. Coach Kramer, who you got? Memphis?
I got Memphis.
All right. Coach DerCola, who you got?
Cincinnati. It's at home.
Going Cincy at home. Coach Medicis, who you rolling with?
Coach Catanzaro on the stream a while ago said Cincinnati's a better team than Michigan right now. I agree. I think Cincinnati wins, and I think this is a statement game.
Rock's gonna lose his mind over there.
All right, Sianis, who you rolling with?
I'm gonna go with Cincinnati, the Fighting Luke Fickles. Big fan of Luke down here in Columbus. So
yeah, I'm going Cincinnati. I think they play defense in the American Conference, and I think they got some pretty good skilled positions. They've always had good skilled players. Just a matter of defensively, could they stop anybody? But I'll agree, Nick from C-Bus, Fickles brought a defensive mentality to Cincinnati. I think he gets a big job next year.
he can recruit too.
Yep. So I'm going with Cincinnati. All right. Indiana, they go from unranked to 17th this week because they beat Penn State. Let's go with Sianis first. Do they beat Rutgers this week?
They get him, but it's gonna be close. I give Medicis credit there. It's a good upset special. But I think Indiana, too much talent, and I think Rutgers' lack of offense exposes themselves.
Coach Kramer, who you got?
I got Indiana in this one. I do think they're going to slip up here soon, but I think they'll ride the wave this week with a win.
All right, Coach Medicis, who you got?
I'm going Rutgers. I think coming off that big win, they're gonna come in and Rutgers. Greg Schiano brings a different attitude with his teams, and I think Rutgers playing at home is always tough. So I'm going with the home team. I'm going Rutgers.
Greg Schiano should have been the head coach at Tennessee. The media did him out of a job, and so did the alumni. He should have been the head coach at Tennessee that year. Coach DerCola, who you got?
I have to go with Nick Medicis, Rutgers. I think Indiana's going to be living high off their win and probably skating through practice, not looking over past Rutgers. And I think Rutgers is turning the tide a little bit with Schiano, with that mentality he brings.
It pains me to go against the Italian guy because I love Greg Schiano, and nobody's pulling for him more than I am. But Indiana gets by. And it's hard to really say, was Rutgers that good, or was it the 7 turnovers for Michigan State that did them in last week? But either way, a win's a win. But I'm going to go with Indiana. Texas, Oklahoma State. Coach Kramer, who you going with?
Well, that was my second upset special, so I agreed with a lot of you guys. I got the Longhorns going into Oklahoma State and winning.
Yep. All right. Coach Medicis, who you got?
I'm going Texas. Like I said, I think Oklahoma State, top 6 team in the country right now, and sees that matchup with Kansas State. Meanwhile, Texas, Herman's job's on the line. He's got to have this one. I got Texas.
Who do I got? Jake, you didn't go yet, right?
No.
Who you got?
I'm going with Ohio State or Oklahoma State.
Jesus, don't say Ohio State on this.
Oklahoma
Well, I got to
State.
see. We got.
Did you just give the horns down?
Yeah,
Yep.
he did. Let's see. Let me get Nick on here. I think he said he's going to ride Oklahoma State. But my buddy Pat says Nick Medicis, spot on. Jay Reynolds likes Memphis. He also likes Indiana. He likes Texas. Paul Nowecker says, great show, guys. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. Nick, who you rolling with, Sianis?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Oklahoma State. Until Herman proves it to me, I'm not picking them. So I'm gonna go horns down too.
Well, I already picked Texas as my upset special. I love Mike Gundy too, though. I think Mike Gundy's a hell of a football coach, and it's going to be interesting to see if his defense can stop Texas's offense. But I think Texas is going to score too many points this week. But Chubba Hubbard, can they stop him? We'll see. But I'm going to ride Texas in the Fighting Herb hands this week. I wish it was a whiteout game this week at Penn State. I wish it was the white. I think that makes all the difference in this game Saturday night. I don't think Penn State's going to score enough points. But in this game, Penn State always plays tough defensively against the Buckeyes. But I'm going Ohio State. I think too much firepower by the Buckeyes. Coach Kramer, who you rolling with?
Big difference without 110,000 or whatever they put in there at night when they play Ohio State. I think that's going to be a calming effect to Ohio State. I think they may go in there and actually roll Penn State.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Coach DerCola, who you got?
Ohio State. I think they have too much talent, and I think Penn State losing their running back that opted out hurt them a lot.
Yeah, I would agree. Nick, Sianis, I'm not even going to ask you because I know who you're going with. You're going to ride with the Buckeyes.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
I will say, Rock, though, two things on the whiteout real quick. One, Urban Meyer said that was worth 10 points. Every single time they went into Penn State, he felt like they were already walking into Happy Valley if they were going into a whiteout down 10. So he agrees that's a heck of a home field advantage. I agree. I think Penn State's front seven is going to give Ohio State some fits. I look for a very similar start as we saw for Ohio State against Nebraska. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than people want it to be. And then I think Ohio State will pull away late. But, I do see Ohio State just too much offensive talent.
Coach Medicis, who you rolling with?
White out, green out, blue out, red out. I don't think it matters. Penn State looked awful last week. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it like it is. I think Ohio State rolls, and they roll early on, and it's not even close.
You know where Penn State's always good, though? They've been linebacker U for a long time. I think Penn State's going to stop the run. I think they're going to make Justin Fields throw the football. But I also am going to say this. Penn State's at home. I know the 110,000 makes all the difference in the world. They've always played the Buckeyes pretty close, though. So I think Nick Sianis, I agree with you. I think it's closer than people think, even without the 110,000. If they can keep it close, a special teams play may make all the difference this week.
Watch Shaka Tony, too, on the outside. Give Ohio State's fits. They're starting a younger freshman or starting a younger left tackle. So keep an eye out for that.
So my buddy Pat says he likes Cincinnati this week, Indiana. He likes Texas, and he likes Penn State. Now, Pat, you got to respond to this. You think Penn State's going to beat them outright, or are you taking Penn State with the points? You'll have to let me know. Put it there in the comment box. All right, we got to pick Syracuse. Usually on Saturday mornings, we always pick Colgate games, the Fordham games, the Syracuse games, and Coach Medicis always rides them this week. So I'm going to start with you first, Coach. Syracuse Wake, who you got? At the Dome in front of nobody, who you got?
I was going to say in front of the blank out that we're going to have in Syracuse this week. Syracuse looked better against Clemson. It just comes down to which Syracuse team is going to show up. The one that played Clemson strong for a while, or the team that got beat up by Liberty? I'm going to go out on the limb and say Wake's coming off a big win. They played their last 4 games at home. They're starting 3 on the road. Syracuse is going to get this game. They're going to steal it. Syracuse wins a close one.
All right. Coach DerCola, who you got?
Got to go Wake Forest. It's just Syracuse, you don't know what team's going to show up. If Dino has the big pregame talk and get some hype, hey, I think they could pull it out and win. But if not, then I think Wake is playing pretty well right now with winning 2 or 3 in a row, and I think they'll continue it going.
All right, Nick Sianis, who you got?
Yeah, I'm going to take Wake. Syracuse, just too inconsistent as for all the reasons we talked about. Young team, new coordinators, et cetera. Offensive line's a mess. I just think Wake Forest, these are teams that they exploit. Right, they're a well-coached team, fundamentally sound. I don't think Syracuse has it.
Coach Kramer, who you got?
I'm pulling for the orange on this one, but I do think that Wake will exploit them, and I just don't know if Syracuse can score enough points.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Wake. I will say this: I think the Syracuse Clemson, Coach Medicis, I agree with. I think Syracuse played better, but I also don't think Clemson played their A game against Syracuse and still won by 3 or 4 touchdowns. But I'll say this: Syracuse has played Wake really well the past 2 to 3 years, so it's always a good game. But I'll say this: I think Wake's got better athletes, and I think Wake's going to stop the run. So I'm going to go with the fighting claw offense this week in that one. All right, so I got to give you guys your final things. We're running out of time here. I'm going to give you guys each a minute. Any last words for the show, parting shots this week for the weekend, what we can look for? Let's go with let me go with my guy Nick from C-Bus, and then Nick, I'll have to cut you off the show. I appreciate you coming on, but parting shots, what do you got for us tonight?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about our buddy Lane Kiffin. I think everybody saw $25,000 fine. for pointing out to the SEC officials for not replaying an obvious touch ball on a kickoff. I'm sick and tired of these refs feeling that they're above reproach when it comes to after the game and the following days that after the game has passed. I think we've talked at length today about how each individual calls and an individual game puts coaches on the hot seat and can have a lasting impact on a program. And these refs are paid. These refs are paid big money. They're coach in Division I, or they're ref in Division I college football. And the fact that a coach can't come out and criticize an official, he didn't curse. He criticized the official, and then the SEC comes out a day later and says, "You're right, we blew the call," and they still want him to pay a $25,000 fine over these refs, thinking that they don't deserve to be criticized. So my parting shot is good for you, Lane. I hope you pay them all. I hope you pay them in pennies. For that fine. And Roth, thanks so much for having me. I hope we do it again. Had a blast.
You got it, buddy. I'll talk to you the weekend. And how about a GoFundMe page for Lane Kiffin? Maybe we could see that too. Thanks, partner. I appreciate you tonight.
Thanks, guys. Yep.
All right, let me let's see here. Let me see where my screen goes to. Let's go. Coach DerCola, you're up. Solo tonight. What do you got?
Yeah, but college football, so much better than watching the NFL with all these close games and some upsets and everything. The biggest thing I'm looking forward to or looking out for is to see what team possibly has to sit out because of the coronavirus and having possibly a false positive, and if it's in the Big Ten, and even if you have a false positive, you still got to sit out for a while and see what programs do their best to keep their guys out of it. And, and what towards the end of the year, when it comes to the championship games, is it going to come up again? What are they going to do? So say if we're in the Final Four, if one of those Final Four teams that week of playing gets the coronavirus and the team has to sit out, what's going to happen? So I'm interested to see how everything shakes down. And are we going to get, is the Big Ten going to be able to play all 8 of their games? Or are they just going to, some teams are going to limp in, and it's obviously for being a Clemson fan, hopefully we stay away from the bug and stay away from the injury. And it was great being on today, talking with you guys and talking lots of football.
Well, Jake, let's do it again soon, man. I'll reach out to you. We'll make this thing happen again. I appreciate it tonight.
Sounds good.
All right, man. We'll see you again. All right. Let me see who it goes to. Let's see. Coach Kramer, what do you got?
Listen, we all love the pageantry of college football. There's nothing like it. I think this year is unique because it puts the pressure on you to each team to deliver every single week. There's no more of those fluff games. We really see where these programs are at. If I had to criticize college football for one thing right now, I just don't enjoy watching 3-4 hour football games. I think the clock issues need to be adjusted. I think that the NFL, in terms of clock management, has it down where these games are 3 hours long. And I do think college football could make a couple subtle adjustments to just make it more appealing to the fans.
Well, Coach, listen, let's do it again soon. As I've been saying, I appreciate you coming on tonight. It's fun. You did a great job. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Had a great time.
All right, Coach. We'll see you again soon. I didn't forget you, Nick. There you are. All right, what do you got?
I just want to take a second to talk about the 20th ranked team in the country, the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. I love this story. I love the fact that they're ranked. They're playing without their starting quarterback right now. They have a bunch of winnable games left, and Louisiana Lafayette was ranked early on. There's a big matchup in a couple of weeks. What happens if Coastal Carolina wins out and all of a sudden sneaks into a BCS game down the line? I think that's an exciting possibility. I'm rooting for them from here on out.
Well, Nick, for a basketball guy, you did pretty good tonight. If I had to give,
I was trying to hang in there. I told you, I got some notes here. I brought more notes than I brought to the radio show in 4 years.
Hey, you know what though? You and I have been saying we got to do this. This was fun. This was the most fun I've had in a long time, and I'll have to reach out to the crew, see if we can do it again, and then definitely during bowl season. But I think we should do this college football rewind again, maybe in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I recorded who everybody picked as well. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna need those picks.
figured I could bring something to the table. I got a pencil right here, so I might as well use it. So I did a little jotting down.
All right. Well, I'm gonna give you my part in shots here, but listen, I appreciate you coming on as always. I know we'll see you again on Saturday, but good stuff tonight, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, man. We'll talk to you again. Was that not fun or what? If you're just tuning in and you missed a college football rewind tonight, I can't thank the crew enough. Sorry to my buddy Pat. For some reason, we couldn't get you on. I'm not sure if it was on my end. It probably was. I don't know if I can get too many people on. But Coach DerCola was fantastic. Coach Kramer was fantastic. Nick from C-Bus, who's been a friend of mine for a long time. Nick from C-Bus and I started the Rock and Nick Sports Show back in Columbus, Ohio, a long time ago, over 10 years ago. And he's a good caller on Saturday mornings for me. And then, of course, I got to give a shout out to Coach Medicis. He's been one of my right-hand guys on the Saturday morning Sports Watch show. Fantastic. My part in shot is real easy, is the Big Ten's got to do away with the 21-day rule. If you test positive for COVID, they're doing their own rule, and you have to sit out for 21 days. That's 3 weeks. An 8-game season, that's 3 weeks. So Wisconsin's quarterback, the true freshman, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and for the first time in a long time, Wisconsin has a quarterback, but he's going to have to sit out for half the season. Big Ten, get it right. Do away with the 21-day rule so these kids can play. So listen, make sure to follow the show on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter. If you watched me tonight on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Next week, the Rock Pile, I'll be talking to Eddie the Truck Gordon, MMA fighter, and also a former teammate of mine from Fordham University is going to join me next week on the show. So I'll be back to the normal show next Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. So on behalf of myself, Coach Passalacqua, Coach DerCola, Coach Kramer, Coach Medicis, Nikki from C-Bus, I appreciate you tonight, my man, and thanks for